Good morning or good afternoon or good lunchtime. It's 12 o'clock here in Germersheim at the moment, and welcome very much to our 2 days lecture series. I hope everybody is here. Actually, I have so many windows open that I cannot see the participants at the moment, but I hope you are here. I suppose, yeah, it's already the 7th session today. I suppose you know this format already. It's our ReDICo lecture series, and yeah, we are nearly finishing already. Yeah, it's the second last presentation today. And as you know the format and so on, I think I can continue immediately already with our guests today. Today we will hear something about Turo, whatever this means, hashtag Turo, debating the mind on Twitter, national and transcultural discourses on social media. With us today are Nadine Thielemann and Martina Berrocal. Nadine Thielemann is professor of Slavic linguistics and intercultural communication at the Vienna University, not to confuse with Jena University. Yeah, it's Vienna here in Austria. University of Economics and Business. She's interested in how commercial and governmental organizations engage with stakeholders at the national and transnational levels, and how they tailor their communication to the cultural context. And here's also Martina Berrocal. Hi. She is a postdoc at the Institute of Slavic Languages and Caucasus Studies at the Friedrich Schiller University in Jena, Germany. Her research interests include pragmatic and corpus-based analysis, political and environmental discourse, and strategic communication. I'm very happy that you two are here with this topic. We have a focus on the one hand on Eastern Europe today, and on the second hand, it's something more related to the academic discipline of economics, not so much maybe or also, but yeah, not so much putting the focus on language and also on language, but not from specifically combined linguistics with economic ideas. And these are two topics that have been neglected a little bit in our lecture series so far. So I'm very much looking forward to these case views on economy-oriented topic. So I think this is enough words beforehand by myself. And now, Nadine and Martina, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for organizing such a great series, which is really inspiring for many of us. We will start not right away with the talk, but I would like to pose a question, and that is, what comes to your mind when you think of energy? And Roman will share a Menti link. So please log into Menti and answer the question. You can answer, just react with 1 word, but you have up to 3 words you want to share with us.
So, am I mute? No, you should be able to listen to me. And now you should see the results. Maybe, Fergal, I can see you. Can you give me a thumb up if you can see?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect.
You can see them. Yeah, they are still regrouping. More. Okay. Oh, I think it has not changed in a bit. So maybe we can take this image as a starting point. And when we look at what you have shared with us, we can see several groups, like kind of energy, electricity, but also what we can observe here: fossil fuels, energy crisis, conflict. The energy is perceived nowadays as expensive, but there are also points of view from the physics. Energy is never lost. Also, energy is happiness, like from a quite different field. And there are also some keywords shared with us that refer to sustainability and transformation. So, and this is where we would like to start. Okay, that's our starting point. And now I will share my presentation with you. Thank you, Roman, for helping us with Menti. And from the current slide, I will. Can you share? Can you see the presentation? Just, yeah, thank you. And so this is the outline of our presentation. So first we will give you just a hint of theory, then provide the context, because we are concentrating on a case study. So we have to explain a bit of what's the case about, then introduce the method and material, how we proceed in our study, and then after that we will present the finding and discuss the results. So what was our motivation? So on the one hand, it is obvious that hashtags aggregate public discourse, as Zapavinia points out. On the other hand, it was obvious to us, or what we were observing in the discourses, that these discourses aggregated under one hashtag are not homogeneous. And so what we were asking ourselves, how we can characterize these discourses. So one way to do that, and we did that in our study, was to characterize categorize the discourses according to the language. So we created a language-based sub-discourses. The other step we made was that we aim to identify and describe pragmatic patterns. So we pose ourselves a series of questions. So what pragmatic patterns are common in those language-based discourses? Are the same patterns prominent in all languages? Are some patterns prominent in one language, but not in the other? And we also ask ourselves, how can we interpret the differences and similarities in the particular discourses? So just a bit of theory for you. So we talk about pragmatic patterns and that we want to characterize discourses in terms of pragmatic patterns. But how do we view pragmatic patterns? For us, these are a way of characterizing discourses, describing regularities and patterns which are abstracted from particular events. And for us, this event was a dispute between Poland and the Czech Republic over a lignite mine, Turów. That's the answer to Roman. So what Turów is, it's a lignite mine. And so obviously, so this mine stands in the center of our study. The lignite mine, as you can see here at the map, is located close to German and Czech border. So just so that you can see the location. And the context of this study is dictated by a number of circumstances. So at the EU level, the context of this study is the Green Deal, which is the EU strategy to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. This should be done in a cost-effective and socially balanced way. So the slogan for the whole process is a just transition. This strategy encompasses several intertwined initiatives, which are also known as Fit for 55, which are initiatives how to pursue this transformation in a number of sectors. And one of the sectors is the energy sector. So that's one level. At another level, at the international level, there was a dispute between Poland and the Czech Republic, which was sparked by a negative environmental impact that the mining operations had on the groundwater reservoir on the Czech side. So basically, the people in the villages did not have any water in their wells anymore. On the Polish side, however, the topic of phasing out fossil fuels strikes a really sensible chord in the region Bogatynia. So it's the region where the mine is located. And it presents an issue, a problem for the corporation PGE. I won't be saying PGE because I'm used to saying PGE as it is in Polish, so that you understand why PGE. And PGE is the leader on the Polish energy market. And now what's the problem for PGE? PGE has to juggle the traditional fossil-based business and the effort to maintain positive image as a corporation, and the new requirements of the decarbonization policies, but also the societal mood and new customer tendencies. So what this particular case is about. So here is a timeline of the whole Turów case. So in September 2020, the Czech Republic filed a complaint with the European Commission, complaining about the vanishing water on the Czech side. In December 2020, the European Commission acknowledged that this complaint has valid grounds, but nothing happened after that. And so in February 2021, the Czech Republic filed a lawsuit at the Court of Justice of the European Union and asked for the mining operation to stop. How the reaction of Poland was quite the opposite. In April 2021, the Polish side extends the license of the Turów lignite mine until 2044. And the reaction of the Court of Justice of the European Union is that it issued a preliminary decision that the extraction operation have to stop. However, this was ignored by Poland, and so there came another decision which imposed a fine of €500,000 for each day the mining operation continue. And that really actually was an impulse to start negotiations with the Czech side, and these led to an agreement which was signed on February the 3rd between the Czech and Polish side, with the outcome that Turów continues the operations, the Czech side withdraws the lawsuit, and the Czechs, they will be compensated in they will get 35 million euros from the Polish state and 10 million euros from PGE, so that they are able to build a water supply for the villages where there is no water. So now, what was our material? We analyzed tweets with the hashtag #ToRoof in the time span April the 1st, 2021 to February 28th, 2022. Altogether, we got almost over 80,000 tweets. And as we wanted to approach the material in line with Gabaudo's digital hermeneutics in a close and qualitative way, we had to find a way how to reduce the size of the material. And so we introduced top sampling filter criteria, and we filtered for tweets that were emitted by accounts with more than 1,000 followers and tweets that were retweeted more than 5 times. And we got reduced samples, 101 for English, 73 for Czech, and 1,800 for Polish. And it was still a big sample for us to handle it manually. So we drew 3 randomized samples from that. So we analyzed 303 Polish tweets. So, and how did we approach the material? When we started researching for our article, so how we can code tweets or what approaches are there on the market. So we saw that there were like feature-based coding schemes that operationalized linguistic features. There were interpretative schemes that, however, were quite difficult to replicate, and the same replication problem applies to the pragma linguistic approaches. The problem with the feature-based schemes that are used mainly in computer linguistics is that they really focus only on one function, and we realized that in our material there is one main function, however that the structure of the tweets is much richer, and we did not want to lose this richness of the tweets. So what we did, we focused on one main function in the way it's done in other studies, one tweet, one function. So the main functions for us were appeal as a call of to action, emotivity, expression of an emotive stance or information, so reporting or a rendition of information in form of a quote. For that, we used really linguistic features. So for appealing, we coded for appealing when we encountered imperatives, hortatives, or deontic expression, like we should do that, we shouldn't do other things, or imperative stop mining, or informing when we encounter direct or indirect quotes, and evaluating or emotivity with were coded when the tweets contained evaluative or expressive lexic, ironic means, or constructions such as exclamations or rhetorical questions, performative verbs like thanking, congratulating, but also tweets that contained irony. So what were our patterns? What patterns did we identify? For appeal patterns, we identify 3 sub-patterns. So one is the pure one, as a pure call to action. For example, mining operation must immediately cease, and the Polish government should stop pretending coal has future, stop Turów. Then the second pattern is call to action that is based on information. So there is an appeal as a head act, and it is backed by an argument, by a piece of information. And we could rephrase that as the message of the tweet can be rephrased as X should be done because. And this is an example for such a tweet is so. We confronted the ministers today because the current draft is not sufficient to protect the environment and water supply on the Czech side of the border. Stop illegal mining. Again, the main function call to action. The third pattern, the third appeal pattern is call to action, which is based on emotively framed information. So again, there is a piece of information that supports the appeal, but it's emotive. So for example, BGL has been operating the mine illegally and the local people have been losing water. That's not acceptable. Commission has to act, and the European Court press has to introduce sanctions for that. So the second group of patterns are those emotive patterns. Again, there is a pure emotivity that is really straightforward. The refugees had a warmer welcome despite the majority of them being terrorists. Shame on you. So this is a expression of anger about that the Polish citizens are not paid attention to in Luxembourg. And then the next pattern is emotivity evaluation backed by information, as in the example, a Czech government secretly approved mine deal last night and Polish prime minister is due to sign today. This is scandalous, and the new government is trampling on its own promises to run the country transparently and democratically. So there is a piece of information that supports the expression of emotion. And the last group is the informing group. So first sub-pattern, it's just the straightforward one. The Czech side complaint to the European institution has been withdrawn. The second one is informing in a form of quote that, however, is the author of the quote is not the holder of the account. So it is possible to have a gentleman's agreement with the Poles on Turów mine if they do not comply with the Court of Justice ruling. Prime Minister Morawiecki not only refused to comply with the court order, but he is proud of it, say Czech sources. So the Czech sources are being quoted as a source of the emotive markers. And the last pattern is providing information, but also providing interpretation of what the information means and contextualizing what reflection it may have on the future. So the European Commission will soon start deducting payments to Poland for penalties imposed by the European Court of Justice on the Turów mine. These are $1 million fines and an unprecedented decision in the EU history. The bill for the inept PiS governments is paid by all of us. So what it means that all the Polish citizens will have to pay for the inability for the incapable politicians, PiS politicians. And now I will give the floor to Nadine.
Okay, thank you, Martina. Now I will continue. This slide nicely actually sums up what Martina has introduced. This is our coding scheme, so our analytical framework, the classes of tweets which we try to identify in each data sample. So there are the capital letters mark the primary function. So they are calls to actions or tweets that exclusively call to an action, that exclusively express emotivity, and that exclusively update information either by reporting something or rendering a quote. But we also found complex or more composite patterns, and the lowercase letter indicates the subsidiary function. So we not only have a pure appeals or appeals proper, but also calls to actions that are justified by an argument or that may as well be emotively augmented. And when it comes to emotivity tweets, we not only find pure emotivity tweets, but also tweets that express an emotive stance on some information. So let's go like, this happened and I don't like it, for example. Yeah. And we have tweets that exclusively in a most neutral way render information, or that render information that includes an emotive stance. These are mostly when accounts render quotes that are highly emotional. And we have tweets that contextualize the information. This is the very last pattern. The capacity of these tweets is that the message is like, this happened or this decision was made and this is how it should be interpreted. So they are in a sense contextualizing and argumentative too. So these are the patterns which we identified in each data sample. Martina, if you move on to the next slide. So both of us coded each of the data samples. And then we calculated intercoder reliability. So we separately coded each sample, and then we had a closer look at those tweets where we coded them in the divergent way, where we identified different tweet patterns. This was then later settled in a discussion between us. But as you can see, that the coding scheme works quite well. We have quite high intercoder reliability, as you can see in the last column with the relatively high Krippendorff values. So, and this points to actually the good quality of the coding scheme, or that it works and it's applicable. We would now move on to the findings, and what these coding or this coding scheme enabled us is to determine the distribution of the various patterns across the three language samples. And the distribution of the patterns allows us to identify or reflect the overall tenor of the social media debate in each language. So what is a common characteristic is that in each of the data samples, informing tweets predominate. Yeah. So this is like no surprise, because there are many media, as you remember from the previous slide, that we applied outreach criteria. So among the accounts that we have analyzed, there are also many journalists and media accounts, and they offer a continuous stream of updates, how the lawsuit is going on, how bilateral negotiations are going on. So this is no surprise. When it comes to distribution for each, or specific features of the distribution for each of the language sets, then in the English data, emotivity and appeals occur with an equal number. And when it comes to the Czech and the Polish data sample, then there are slightly more emotivity patterns or emotivity tweets than appeal tweets. So now we're already on the first slide of the English data sample. As I said, we frequently find these informing patterns across all samples, and they are not particularly interesting because they simply update information about what is going on and what has happened. It's more interesting to have a look at the other two macro functions or basic functions, which are appeals and emotivity patterns. And when it comes to the English data sample, then appeals play a quite important role. And this is typical or points to the promotional or activist character of the English language discourse, which can be described as being an instantiation of part of a more generic or global environmental discourse that adopts a perspective on the mind of Turov as an environmental problem, as a problem or a challenge to a climate-friendly policy. It is, in doing so, part of a larger, more global activist agenda. This is also typical of the discourse that it includes many that kind of set phrases or phrasal patterns, many tweets that follow a similar wording of phrasing, which points to many professionally managed accounts taking part in this part of the discourse. We also find that there are many like generic arguments in the debate ReDICo, which could easily also be applied to other similar scenarios. Those of you who follow the German media discourse or coverage on Lützerath or generally coal and outphase or stopping or Germany ending nuclear energy may have followed the debate on Lützerath. So when analyzing data, Martina and I often thought that you could simply also insert Lützerath or any other coal mine where there is a controversy in the tweet. So they follow a standardized pattern that can be flexibly applied to different scenarios. So what is typical for these this global generic environmental, could you go back once more, Martina? Back to the previous, thank you, is are appeal patterns. However, pure appeals are rarely met. Instead, we rather find calls to actions that are backed by an argument, which might as well be emotively augmented in order to stress the urgency of action. So what they do, they call to action, and we also often find, and this is indicated by a handle, the stakeholder who's addressed or who is called to action. These are either political stakeholders, so at the EU level, but also at the national level, or representative stakeholders of the energy industry. In our case, this is obviously PGE. So now move on, please, Martina, next slide. Thank you. So these are the patterns, the argumentative patterns, how the appeal or call to action is backed in the English data. And these argumentative patterns are rendered in a very similar phrases, but we find many instantiations of these patterns. So one line of argument goes like, continuing mining or operating Turów breaches EU law, so mining must stop. This is like an argument tailored to Turów. The next one is also somehow tailored to Turów and points to tech communities in the borderlands being deprived of water, so mining must stop. And the last line of argument is more generic and is actually does not refer to any particular case, but makes a more global and generic argument by pointing to the negative consequences on environment, climate, and human health. So stop mining, outphase coal, or fossil energy in general. So next slide, please, Martina. Okay, so these appeal patterns or calls to action are typical for this activist discourse, which points to many environmental organizations or institutions promoting an environmental agenda at a global level, taking part in the debate. At the same time, and this is like an equal number of tweets, more or less, we find many emotivity tweets in the English sample. Again, these, when it comes to the expression of an emotive stance, with regard to these tweets, we rather deal with a kind of what we characterize as a professional display of emotion. So these are this is emotive language applied in order to bolster an argumentative appeal or to an argument. So what these emotivity markers do, they are not necessarily a sign of personal involvement or being personally effective, but they rather contribute to a polarization of the debate by clearly marking what is good and what is bad and polarizing that. So we find similarly standardized and set phrases and repetitive patterns when it comes to the expression of emotivity in the English sample. So it's a kind of display of moral outrage, but rather for applied in an instrumental way in order to leverage polarization. So we find a pattern that follows like a strong expression of evaluation, either positive or negative, and then what that emotivity refers to. We also find devaluative labels when it comes to stakeholders. So, for example, a very expressive language when they refer to PGE or fossil fuel companies, like PGE is coal greed, PGE is Europe's largest climate killer. When they use emotivity images, then they create an image that fosters the argument that there is they need to urgently take action. So when they describe the scenario of the excavators coming ever closer to people's homes. So if we move on to the next slide, you find typical examples, and you also get an idea about the nature of the accounts, and their position. So on the very left, you find in the embedded picture also a nice example of culture jamming, where Mosse from PGE's campaign in support of Turów is subverted. At the center, you find a Czech Greenpeace account, and on the very right, you find a typical example of these tweets that try to also, in the visual content embedded, try to stress the urgency of action by showing that the operations at Turów are continuing and approaching the settlements which they threaten. So yeah, this is the English discourse, which can be roughly, to sum up once more, characterized as being part of a more global and generic environmental discourse that takes Turów as an example or a case to promote its more general agenda that makes references to the particular case, but which, through the way the tweets are phrased, does not point to the account holders being personally involved or affected, but rather being a professional at a professional level taking part in the debate on behalf of an institution or organization. This contrasts very much with the Polish data and the Polish, thank you, and the Polish debate on Turów, where the issue of Turów is not framed as an environmental problem or challenge, but as an exclusively, I'd say, inner political issue that has a negative impact on Poland. Similarly, here we find many emotivity tweets, more emotivity than appeal tweets, but the ways in which emotivity or emotive stance is expressed here points to being personally engaged, invested, and also effective in some way. The emotion that is first and foremost expressed are negative emotions such as anger, frustration, or dissatisfaction. But these negative emotions are not directed at or triggered or elicited by the fact that there is a harm done to climate or the environment, but the target is the Polish government and the leading party, which is, I never know how to pronounce that in English, it's Prawo i Sprawiedliwość, like law and justice, but both PiS and peace seem to be strange. This is the main target. This points to a more community of oppositional netizens gathering on Polish Twitter there. So why do we think that this is a different kind of emotivity? This is why this is because the markers of emotivity are more colorful and creative. So we find many ways in which the users play with both the name of the head of the party, Kaczynski, and the acronym of the party, PiS, to form creative wordplays, to devaluate them. So Poland is referred to as Kaczystan. Kaczynski is the name of the party leader. Those who brilliantly fucked up the Turów case is in Polish. You can, it's based on a wordplay in Polish with the name of the party with the acronym PiS. When it comes to negative emotions, then they refer to basically three things. We have a large group of tweets that bemoan the moral decay of PiS politicians, and that use the discussion or the controversy surrounding Turów as an opportunity to point to other scandals caused by PiS politicians, which similarly illustrate their incompetence. Another prominent topic or theme is the amount of fine. So in the course of the lawsuit, Poland was fined to pay 500 or 0.5 million euro fine per day. This again is linked to other PiS scandals that harmed the Polish budget substantially. And the last thematic strand is made up of tweets that point to the fact that it is the Polish taxpayer or the average toll who has to pay for the poor management of this conflict by PiS. So what happens in the Polish data is that Turów is turned into another example of how the PiS government badly manages Poland and how they harm Poland, and not as an environmental or climate problem. Next slide, please. Here you see illustrations. Probably not many understand Polish, so I only comment on the upper one on the left. This is like a typical meme where you see information that points to diverse scandals in which the Polish government or the PiS party was involved, and the fine or the amount of financial damage it caused to the Polish state. So yeah, it's like I don't know what's the English word for it. So you can here calculate or see how much costs PiS causes the Polish taxpayer. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and this impression, or what adds to this picture, are also the tweets that contextualize information. So these are tweets, or the pattern is like, this happened and this is how it should be or could be interpreted. They interpret or try to contextualize and point to the consequences of the way in which PiS manages the Turów case. And again, here we find themes, the same themes featuring prominently as in the previous patterns, that is the negative impact of the financial fine or penalty on the Polish budget, and the negative effect of how peace manages the Turów case are both on the relationship with the EU, but also on the relationship with its neighbor, Czechia. So summing up, we clearly see again that on Polish Twitter, Turów is not seen as an environmental problem, but the dominant perspective is that of this is how badly we are managed by our politicians. It's taken into an opportunity to criticize the government and to its more point to the both incompetent and morally questionable way to deal with political problems. Now Martina moves on and shows you how Turów is dealt with and discussed in Czechia.
So we will stay with the same pattern as the information and evaluation, contextualization of the information provided. And initially the case, the Turów case, was seen as a local problem. So the problem was scarcity of groundwaters in the villages close to the mine is developed, however, and this pattern was mostly used to criticize the management of the Turów case by the Czech government. And what was criticized was the inactivity of the government, so they were not doing anything. So that was a problem. And the other thing that was criticized was a wrong activity. When they did something that was not really beneficial to the case, that was rather detrimental. And it was the agreement closure with Poland, which was seen by a large part of the population as not favorable for the affected areas and settlements. And what was also criticized in a quite a heated debate was the concealment of the agreement for several days. So they closed the agreement and nobody knew what the agreement was about. It was just kept secret. And okay, so that was the evaluate, so information and contextualization pattern. But what was also prominent in the Czech data and in a quite specific way was the emotivity patterns. So the emotivity pure and emotivity backed by an argument. So what's typical for the Czech data is a presence of irony that is driven into absurdity and nonsensical expressions. What we encounter expression of protest and disagreement, and the target of these tweets are the Polish negative stance towards the solution of the Turów problem and a lack of a firm position of the on the Czech side. And I will really go into the tweets, into Czech tweets, because they are really quite unique. So I won't read the Czech versions because there are only a couple of you that speak Czech, but I will dive into the English translation. So, and the tweet reads, when you pretend before the election that everything will change because you are basically Churchill reincarnated, and then you sign a horse trade arranged by Babiš, which was the previous prime minister, and sell the people in borderlands to Polish coal barons for a leaky wall. So this is a criticism of the agreement that was closed by the current government, because they were saying that there would not be an agreement then. The agreement was signed, and it was really seen as quite a detrimental to the region, and was seen as pointed here as selling the people in the borderlands. The other examples of this pattern is, for example, a tweet that was emitted by Greenpeace Czech, and this tweet criticizes the secrecy of the deal that was closed, and it's labeled as this is scandalous, and the new government is trampling on these promises, because the new government promised that they will they will handle the matter transparently, and that's not done that way. Another tweet I would really like to point out, so that you see the irony and the absurdity in the Czech data, is this one: that the 2042 Olympics must be in mind to roof, otherwise I don't see it. There will be a downhill run on the dams and an ice rink down there from the water that will flow in from Bohemia. So this is in a commenting on the situation in an ironic way that brings it ad absurdum that there will be Olympic games, because there are the heaps and there is water that actually should be in the Czech Republic, but flows from the Czech Republic to Poland. So, and now again, Nadine will conclude.
Thank you. Yeah, we come to an end. I mean, we also introduced our coding scheme. I don't know whether that is particularly interesting for you here, but hopefully we have shown that the identification and distribution of the patterns allows us to identify the overall tenor or flavor of the debate. So what we have shown that each of the samples is aligned in a different way with the topic of the mind. So the English data sample clearly points to transnational and environmental discourse, in which professional activists that pursue global environmental climate-friendly agenda take part, which take Turów as another opportunity to promote a global decarbonization agenda. At the same time, we see that this discourse is far from the local implications of the problem. It's more generic, and it's probably also a very elitist discourse that is detached from how it affects the people in proximity of the mind, but also people's everyday lives. And this contrasts with the national discourses, which are much more emotive, characterized by an emotivity that is rooted in being personally affected. But what annoys people, or what raises the anger of the participating account holders or tweeters, is not the environmental implications of burning coal for electricity, but it's in both countries the way how badly their governments and the politicians manage that case or that problem, that lawsuit. So it's rather taken as an example of poor political performance, and not seen or framed as an environmental problem. And we have derived some implications for practice for different stakeholders from these observations, focusing basically on three stakeholders: NGOs or environmental advocacy organizations, as the discourse is shaped in our English data, seem to be in how they communicate their agenda, seem to be far from the everyday experience of the people. So the standardized message patterns that they render seem to be like universally applicable. But also point to a more elite discourse, which is like above people's heads. This obviously is also due to the challenges they inherently face, because it's difficult to create a link between climate-caused phenomena and their everyday effects, because the effects may be felt somewhere else, or in a very different way, or at a different time. So it's always difficult to understand a cause-effect relationships if both are far from each other, spatial, temporal, etc. So this is a challenge that comes that's clearly difficult to deal with for advocacy organizations. When it comes to governmental stakeholders and policy makers, Then when it comes to climate-friendly and environmental politics, then this often takes the shape, when they communicate it, takes the shape of bans or restrictions. So I think in Germany, the debate about the Heizungsgesetz, whether you have to buy a new heating system for your private home, whether you can afford it, how long you can run the old system, it's communicated basically, or it comes basically in terms of restrictions that cause costs. So the benefit of the measures, both the immediate financial or the middle range financial benefits, as well as the climate friendly or environmental benefits, usually move to the background. So again, policymakers and governmental communication, stakeholders doing governmental communication face a similar challenge, that benefits often remain abstract or placed in the remote future, and what people are faced with in the immediate future are cost restrictions, problems, and unattractive things, so to say. And the only stakeholders that cope quite well in this scenario are actually corporations or commercial organizations, so in our case, energy companies. And we did another paper that is already published on PGE's campaign in support of Turów. And as Martina has elaborated on at the very beginning with the timeline, the whole case was actually settled in a very favorable manner for PGE, who is allowed to continue operations in Turów, and the lion's share of the costs for the legal settlement was covered by the Polish state. So overall, a very good outcome for PGE. So what we observed in their campaigning, or the public campaign, is that they tailor their communication to the national audience. And in doing so, they create or draw on cultural legitimacy and exploit sociocultural and political discursive opportunity structures. In Poland, we found, basically, just to sum it up, that they tailor a more general framing that is globally found when it comes to energy communication, that shifts perspective, or the shift focus from the benefit or the need to do energy transition to the socioeconomic threats posed by energy transition. And they do so in presenting it in a way that the EU wants to harm the Polish through the program of the just transition, the EU decarbonization policy. And this strikes a chord with the overall right-leaning or right-wing sentiments in Poland, which is very Eurosceptical. So if you create an argument that says the EU wants to harm Poland, you win people's hearts. Not because it's no longer seen as an environmental problem, but it's seen as a threat to Polish sovereignty being a watchword and very important concept in the Polish debate. To return to our scenario, we see that energy companies are somehow most coping or doing best in handling these challenges. And we thus created a task for you to join the discussion for the breakout rooms. And again, we probably need some assistance. So we would be, we were tacitly working on the assumption that you probably rather prefer to take sides with an environmental position, or the environmentally friendly position. So imagine that you are a PR strategist or specialist working at a global PR company, and a client wants you to devise a worldwide campaign, a transnational, transcultural campaign that promotes environmentally friendly energy. So you've now seen that there is this kind of elite discourse, but you've also seen that locals may have a different take on how they perceive that problem. So discuss in your breakout sessions, how would you develop a communicative strategy what would you focus on? And we'd ask you to come up with first 2 arguments and maybe 2 communication channels. And Roman also advised us that before you start your discussion, you should first agree on a spokesperson who could then share the outcomes of your group discussion in the plenary. I mean, thank you for sharing your insights. I mean, you developed some very interesting ideas, especially the idea to turn it into something that affects people personally by pointing to the children as representatives of the future generation. I think this is a good way to turn it into something personal. And me, as somebody who's in her late 40s, I mean, I use some social media, but maybe Twitter, which is like in German they say an alte Leute medium. So I feel that Instagram is the new channel to go. So you implemented that too. And I also find it quite interesting that you felt somehow the need, and it's indeed difficult to target many people and useful, and always a good way to go to somehow limit and narrow down the target group with the younger people. So I like that very much. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe some of you consider a future career in communications. Then you can probably also draw on part of the input you got at your studies in Jena, Potsdam, and Germersheim. So Martina, from your background in teaching crisis communication and
I think you have wrapped it up nicely, so I have nothing to add.
So thank you very much, and also for your engagement in the breakout sessions and your ideas. Thanks for sharing. And thanks Roman, Fergal, and Carmen and Mileni for giving us the opportunity to present our research. Thank you very much. We appreciate this. We also enjoy the format.
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course, it's my task to thank you for giving us your time and ideas and expertise and so on. I think this was really a very good idea how to process and how to look very detailedly in social media data. And with social media utterances, also our asynchronous sessions are connected. We have again in the forum 2 recorded presentations. Both are linked to post-colonialism and ideas of culturality and maybe also transcultural ideas. So there are also links between what we have heard today. So everyone, again, as always, is invited to go to the forum. And now I have a last thing for next week, because next week is our last session, and I will give a presentation about online fandoms, social cohesion and identity construction in online fandoms. And then I have a request to all of you, who are still here. Thank you for staying so long, because I want to prepare a kind of activity which should be attached to topics, fandom topics that you are interested in, and I'm going to share a Mentimeter link which you could visit now. It's as always. Oh, it disappeared somehow. I share it once more. It's anonymous, of course, and I'm interested in the topics you are interested in, kind of the topics where you are a fan of, or what things that intrigue you, really kind of on a private level. For example, if I were you, I would put in the things like soccer and Star Trek and The Simpsons, so it can be specific things like a musician or a sports person or something like this, or a genre like fantasy literature or role games or something like this. So I would be very curious to have your fandom things you like and you're interested in, and then I can construct a session next week, which is more attached to you personally and not only to Star Trek and soccer, which would be maybe boring for you. Okay, so I stop sharing. You have, whenever you need time, maybe someone can de-spotlight me so that I see everyone again. And that's it for today. Thank you very much and stay tuned for next week.